WordPress can be hosted in various ways, and in this tutorial, we'll focus on deploying it on Amazon Cloud. Hi, I'm Alex, a senior software engineer specializing in AWS. In this video, we'll walk through how to set up a WordPress website on an AWS EC2 instance using S3 for backups and offloading media to improve performance. We'll also cover how to manage your WordPress site by accessing its files and database. To make deployment easier, we'll use Docker Compose to run both the WordPress site and its database in containers. While this method might not be ideal for large-scale applications, it's cost-effective for smaller blogs or development environments, especially for plugin developers who need to test across different WordPress versions that can be deployed on a single EC2 instance. By the end of this project, you'll have a solid understanding of EC2 instances, security groups, IAM roles, and permissions. We'll also configure Nginx as a reverse proxy and set up SSL with Let's Encrypt. Let's dive in. Deploying a WordPress website on AWS can be streamlined using Docker Compose, which simplifies the setup and management of the environment. I'm going to walk you through deploying a WordPress site on an EC2 instance using Docker Compose, configuring Nginx as a reverse proxy, pointing DNS record to AWS EC2, and securing your site with Let's Encrypt SSL certificates. Let's take a look at the setup for deploying a WordPress website on an EC2 instance. We will configure an EC2 instance running Ubuntu to host all the components. Docker Compose stack represents an instance of WordPress and MySQL. We have a Docker container running WordPress and a Docker container running MySQL. Running MySQL inside the Docker Compose may not be the best way. However, this is the cheapest way to do it. And with the regular backups, data persistence and reliability issue can be mitigated. For large WordPress websites, you may want to use a standalone database. We will configure Nginx as a reverse proxy, and Nginx configured as a reverse proxy is used to handle incoming HTTP requests on port 80. It forwards these requests to the Docker container running WordPress on different port. In our case, it will be port 8080. We will point the subdomain myblog.alexrusin.com to the public IP address of the EC2 instance. And then finally, we will use the certbot to manage SSL certificates for the domain. This ensures secure HTTPS connections for the WordPress site. As you may have already figured out, with this setup, we can have multiple WordPress sites on the same EC2 instance. Let's take a look at the pros and cons of this deployment. So on the pros side, we'll have a simplified deployment. Using Docker Compose simplifies the deployment process by defining all dependencies and configurations in a single file. This makes setting up WordPress and its dependencies like MySQL straightforward and repeatable. We have resource efficiency. Running multiple containers on the same EC2 instance can be more resource efficient than running separate VMs for each service, as containers share the same OS kernel. And finally, we have a cost efficiency. Reuse of the resources means you don't have to pay for extra ones, such as database or ECS containers. On the cons side, we have a single point of failure. If the EC2 instance fails, all running containers, including WordPress and the database, will go down. This can be mitigated with a proper backup strategies and redundancy. We have a resource limitation. An EC2 instance has limited resources, CPU, memory, storage, and running multiple services, WordPress, MySQL, and Nginx, can quickly exhaust them, especially under heavy load. You may need to resize or add more instances, which involves manual intervention. Finally, we have no built-in high availability. Unlike managed services, running WordPress with Docker Compose on EC2 does not offer built-in high availability. You would need to set up multiple instances, load balancers, and replications manually to achieve high availability. Now the fun part. Let's deploy it. But before we do it, if you are enjoying this video, please like and subscribe to our channel to help YouTube recommend it to more viewers. I am in AWS console. Let's start with creating a security group. Let's create a new security group. We're going to call it EC2 web instance SG, and description we can put allow web access to EC2 instance. Alright, we will leave VPC as it is, and the inbound rules, we're gonna put a few inbound rules. So we will put HTTP. We're gonna select the source anywhere IPv4. And next rule we're gonna create will be HTTPS. This will be source as well, anywhere IPv4. Next rule we're gonna create, again, gonna be HTTP. This one we'll assign anywhere IPv6, and next will be HTTPS, and this one will be the source anywhere IPv6 as well. So these rules take care of a web traffic on port 80 and port 443. So now we need to add SSH rule, right? So let's select SSH. And instead of putting anywhere IPv4, IPv6, or even my IP, I will use an IP block that will allow to do EC2 instance connect. But how do we know this IP block or IP CIDR? So we can go to blog.alexrusin.com, and then you can scroll down and you can find EC2 instance connect. So click in here, and then all the way in the bottom, you're going to have resources, IP address ranges for EC2 Instance Connect service. So you click on that, you're going to have the tab open, and what you can do is to search for the EC2 Instance Connect, right? So, and then when you do that search, you'll have a lot of this EC2 Instance Connect CIDRs, and those CIDRs are for different region. We are in US East 1 or Virginia, so we'll need to find a US East 1 region and copy the IP address block or CIDR. So we'll find US East 1, and let's copy this IP CIDR. After we copied this IP CIDR, now we can go back to the security groups, and we can paste this CIDR in. So now we can go ahead and create security group. Now let's go to EC2 dashboard, and let's create an EC2 instance. Let's click on a launch EC2 instance, and here in the name, we can put web server 1. I'm just going to click on Ubuntu because I'm better at configuring Ubuntu servers. Next, on a instance type, I'm going to actually leave the T2 micro. However, for your purposes, you may want to get a bigger instance, right? Maybe T2 large or T2 medium. And then later on, you can reserve that instance to have even more savings. Since we are going to use EC2 Instance Connect, you can just go ahead and proceed without a key pair, which actually not recommended. So you want to create a new key pair just in case. I will actually use a tutorials demo key pair because I'm going to be demoing it in my CLI rather than EC2 Instance Connect. So you can see commands a little bit better. So network settings, we're going to leave as is, except we're going to select existing security group, right? And in the security group, we will find the web access demo security group that we just created. In configuring storage, we will leave as 8 gigabytes, right? The default one, but again, you may want to also make it a little bit bigger storage-wise if you're going to be deploying a lot of containers. Just double check that auto-assigned IP address is enabled. This will place the instance in a public subnet. And yeah, we're good to go. And we can click Launch EC2 Instance. Looks like our EC2 instance is running. Let's select this and click on the Connect. And what we're going to be doing, we're going to be using EC2 Instance Connect because we configured the IP address CIDRs here. So let's click in and just wait till it connects. And the connection failed. Let's double check what happened here. So let's go and actually what I did, I connected the wrong security group. So let's click on the security and change the security groups. Right here, I put web access demo. However, we created a different security group. It was EC2 web at instance SG. Click add security group and click save. Now let's go back and click connect again. And now EC2 Instant Connect is working. However, as I mentioned before, I'm going to actually switch into my own CLI and SSH into this instance so you can see configurations command better. I'm also going to be copying and pasting a lot of commands. And what you can do, you can go to, again, blog.alexrusin.com. You can find WordPress on AWS EC2 blog post. And you can just find all these commands, how to install Docker, install and configure Nginx, Docker Compose, and how to point your subdomain and configure Let's Encrypt right here. And the link to this article will be in the description. I just SSH'd into my instance. Let's put the first command to update the packages, sudo apt update. Next, let's install a few prerequisites. Next, we're going to install the GPG key for an official repository. Next, we're going to add the repository. Next, we're going to ensure we're going to install Docker from the official Docker repository instead of Ubuntu repository. And finally, we're going to install the Docker. After Docker is installed, let's check the status of the Docker. And it looks like the Docker is running and active. We actually want to run Docker without sudo, so let's add the Docker to Ubuntu or our Ubuntu user to a Docker group. Let's go ahead and apply this new membership. And let's check if Ubuntu is in a Docker group. And indeed it is. Next, what we're going to do is install and configure Nginx as a reverse proxy. All right, let's first install Nginx. Let's make sure Nginx is running. And it is. Just do :Q to exit. Let's go ahead and create a configuration file. We'll use nano for that. We'll put sudo nano, and I'm just going to put this file in the sites available, and I'll call it myblog.alexrusin.com. And let's go ahead and put the following code in there. This code is basically makes Nginx listen on port 80 for IPv4 and port 80 for IPv6. And when the server name is myblog.alexrusin.com, right, it's going to be proxying it to the local host 8080 port, and it will include the proxy params. So let's go ahead and make changes to this file or save it. We're going to do Control-X and put Y for yes and hit enter. So now let's take a look at those proxy params. So we'll do sudo nano etc Nginx proxy params. Right, and then what we're going to see, it's going to proxy the header, IP, forwarded for, and forwarded protocol, right? So the basic proxy stuff. So let's go ahead and exit out here. So you can do again Control-X. Now we're going to enable this configuration file in Nginx. You're enabling, but by creating a symlink, right? We're going to symlink the sites available, myblog.alexrusin.com, to Nginx sites enabled. All right, after it's done, we can test our configuration. We can do nginx-t, and we forgot to put sudo, so let's do sudo nginx-t, and the configuration syntax is okay, and configuration test is successful. So finally, we're going to restart the Nginx so the settings can take effect, or we can actually reload it as well. So now we should be good to go with Nginx. Next, let's go ahead and create a Docker Compose file, right? We'll create a directory. We're going to put it in www.html myblog.alexrusin.com in Ubuntu home folder. And next, we're going to actually create a composer YAML. We're going to use nano again. And let's go ahead and paste the following code. So let's go ahead, scroll up. So we're basically using MySQL for the database, and we have a volume. It's called DB data. And we have some environment variables, right? Like a strong password, WordPress. Obviously, you're going to put your own environment variables here. We're exposing a couple of ports here, and we're mapping 3306 port, which MySQL normally listens on, to 33060
So then later on, we can actually connect to our database from the outside in case we need to do some database management. So next thing, we have a WordPress, and we're going to be doing WordPress latest image. Right? We're also going to have a volume that we will put in var .html. That's where WordPress will be installed in the container. And we're also going to be exposing the port 80 of the WordPress, and we're going to be binding it to port 8080. And that's what you saw in the Nginx reverse proxy configuration, that it will be configure requests to the port 8080 on localhost. And we also put the environment variables to just credentials to connect to the database. And we have the two volumes, right? DB data volume and a WordPress data volume. So let's go ahead and do Control X and put Y and then hit enter. So we have this file. So now let's go ahead and cd html myblog.alexrusin.com. And now we can just run docker compose up and put -d, so it's detached. And let's just wait till the container is getting pulled and deployed. And it looks like our containers were deployed successfully and are running. So our Docker is running. Now let's go ahead and install Let's Encrypt. To install Let's Encrypt, we're going to be using the snap packet or the snap package manager. You want to remove any old cert bots if you have any, but we don't have any, so we'll just run this command just in case. Next, we're going to be installing the cert bot, and it will be a classic cert bot. Now let's link the cert bot command to our path so we can run it. Before we're going to request a certificate, we'll need to go and point the myblog.alexrusin.com to the IP address of this server. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and switch back to the EC2 console. We'll go to EC2 instances and we'll click here, and we need our public IP address, which we're going to copy right over here. Then I have alexrusin.com registered at GoDaddy. So let's go to GoDaddy. And in the GoDaddy, you go to domains, and you're going to manage a DNS record, or I'm going to manage the DNS record for alexrusin.com. I'm going to click on a domain right here and click on a manage DNS. And what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be creating an A record. So I'm going to do choose one. It will be A record. The name will be my blog. And the IP address we're going to paste right over here that we copied. TL, we can just leave half an hour. Should be just fine. Click Save. We're going to click Continue and Verify. And I'll verify my 6-digit code here. So I successfully verified my identity. And right here I have a record pointing to EC2 instance. So this record hopefully going to be available right away because it's a new one, and we can go ahead and request a certificate using the certbot. Let's go ahead and use the following command to request certificate. We're going to be requesting it for Nginx and for the domain myblog.alexrusin.com, but obviously in your case it will be your own domain. All right, let's hit enter. Just asking for the email address. You can enter your email address here. It's going to say read terms and services. You put yes. Once you first issued to share your email address with the Electronic Frontier Foundation, maybe we'll put no. And account registered, requesting certificate. And we have some challenges have failed. So probably the domain myblog.alexrusin.com has not finished propagating. So we can want to wait for a little bit longer. On the second time is a charm. We just rerun the following command again, and it looks like domain finally propagated. So, and the certificate got issued. So let's go ahead and take a look at the file, configuration file for the myblog.alexrusin.com. So we'll put sudo nano etc nginx sites available and put myblog.alexrusin.com. You can see the file actually got changed here, right? So we still have the server name as myblog.alexrusin.com. We still have a proxy, but now we have added 443 SSL and SSL certificates, right? And we also have a out-of-the-box 301 redirect to HTTPS that hosts that URL. So if someone uses HTTP, right, on port 80, it will automatically redirect it to the port 443. So Nginx installation of certbot took care of that as well, which is pretty neat. So now let's go ahead and exit, Control X. And let's encrypt certificates last only for 90 days, so it is important to renew them regularly. And luckily, the certbot package actually we installed handles this automatically by setting up a timer that runs twice a day. And if certificate is about to expire within 30 days, it will renew it automatically. So let's go ahead and query the status of the timer. And we'll do the following command. And we can see that the timer is active. So run a test renew with the following command, sudo certbot renew --try run, right? So and that's they're simulating the renewal of the certificate to make sure everything is good. Now the fun part, let's go ahead and visit myblog.alexrusin.com, right? And we went to WordPress installation, right? And let's just double check that if we use the HTTP protocol, it will redirect us to HTTPS, which it did. So here we can see that install.php has a 301 moved permanently, and now we're using HTTPS. So everything works fine. So we can just go ahead and install WordPress. I'll just click continue. And it's a basic WordPress installation. You give your site title, you'll put username, your email, and you just click install WordPress. And as you can see, I have successfully installed the WordPress. And also, if you can go to the myblog.alexrusin.com or your blog in that case, you can see the blog. Managing a WordPress blog involves system administration tasks. Often you'll need to adjust settings in the wp config.php file and connect to the database to resolve any issues. We'll explore how to handle system administration for a WordPress instance running inside Docker containers. Here's an overview of the setup. WordPress is deployed on an EC2 instance via Docker Compose with two containers, one for WordPress application and another for the database. Nginx serves as a reverse proxy in front of this setup. With this architecture in mind, we need to manage two key tasks. We need to access the Docker container running WordPress to modify files, especially wp-config.php file, and we need to connect to the Docker container hosting the database to make necessary adjustments. Let's walk through how to accomplish both. I am currently in AWS console, so let's navigate to EC2. You'll notice we have one instance running. We'll select it, go to Security tab, and you will find the security group here. One of the rules in the security group is allowing access via port 22 with a specific IP CIDR. This permits the security group to let us connect to the instance using EC2 Instance Connect. Now let's proceed. We'll click Connect, choose EC2 Instance Connect, and connect. We've successfully connected to the instance. Now let's run the command docker ps. And we can see two containers running. One is for my blog.alexrusin.com WordPress 1, and the other is for my blog alexrusin.com db1. So one container is hosting WordPress and the other is hosting the database. Our goal is to connect to the WordPress container. To connect to WordPress container, we'll use the following command, docker exec -it, meaning interactive, my blog, alexrusin.com WordPress 1, and we're going to be use bash. Now we are inside the container. Let's list the WordPress files using ls-la command. Typically, when administering WordPress, you might need to update wp-config.php file. However, no text editor is installed in the Docker container. So we'll first update the packages with a apt update and then install the nano editor using apt install nano. If it's not already installed, this will add it, but in this case, it seems I already have nano installed. Now let's switch to myblog.alexrusin.com and you'll see that people can install plugins. But when managing a WordPress website, you might want to prevent unapproved plugin installations. So we'll disallow plugin installations. With a nano installed, let's open wp-config.php using nano wp-config.php. We'll scroll down, and somewhere towards the end of the file, we'll add the line define disallow file mods to true. This disables plugin installation. After saving the changes with Ctrl X and Y or Command X and Y if you're on Mac, let's return to the WordPress site and refresh it. You'll notice the option to install plugins has disappeared. If you ever want to re-enable it, simply set disallow file mods to false. That's how you can enter a container, modify files, and manage your WordPress installation. Now let's exit the container and return to the EC2 instance. Another common administrative task is connecting to the database. When we ran Docker PS earlier, we saw MySQL container running. Let's first navigate to the folder where our Docker Compose file is stored, which is at www.html.myblog.alexrusin.com. We open Docker Compose.yaml file with a nano Docker Compose YAML. In this file, you can see we've mapped a MySQL database port 33060 to the actual MySQL port in the container 3306. So what we'll need to do is to allow access to the port 33060, and we'll do it by modifying the security group. Let's go to the security tab, click on the security group and add an inbound rule, and the rule will allow TCP connections on the port 33060, but we will only allow it to our IP address. After saving the rule, we'll copy the public IP of the EC2 instance and open Table Plus. We'll create a new MySQL connection, name it MyBlog connection, and label it production. Then we'll paste the IP address and set the port to 33060 and use the credentials WP user and strong password ! Or whatever password you have there. And now let's test the connection, and it shows that it works. Once connected, we can select WordPress database with a Control K or Command K on Mac, and we can view tables for myblog.alexrusin.com. This is how you connect to the MySQL database running inside a Docker container on EC2 instance. When finished, it's a good practice to remove your IP from the security group to keep the database connection secure. As demonstrated, security groups are essential for managing EC2 instances and Docker containers. For more information on security groups, please check out our related video. Backing up your WordPress site is super important because it lets you restore everything if something goes wrong, like losing data, getting hacked, or having server problems. I will show you how to back up your WordPress site to an Amazon S3 bucket. We will use the Updraft plus WordPress plugin to do this. I'll also guide you through setting up an S3 bucket, creating an IAM user and attaching the right permissions. And lastly, we will use an access key and secret access key to configure the backup settings. Let's get started. I am in a dashboard of newly installed WordPress site. Let's go to plugins, and we're going to go ahead and click on add a new plugin, and we're gonna search for Updraft Plus. And we're gonna find Updraft Plus WP Backup and Migration plugin and click Install Now. Let's go ahead and activate the plugin. And we're all set, so now we're gonna go to Settings and configure the plugin. In the plugin settings, let's click actually on the Settings tab. And here we are presented with many options where we can back up, and we're interested in Amazon S3. But before we do that, let's go ahead and create an Amazon S3 bucket and get the credentials, because if we select Amazon S3, right, it will ask us for access key, secret, and actually the bucket. Let's go to AWS console and go to S3. And here we're going to click on create bucket. And we'll just leave everything the same, and the bucket name will be myblog.alexrusin.com. We're going to scroll down and leave everything as a default, and then we're going to create a bucket. Our bucket is created. Let's click into it, and actually let's click on create folder, and we'll call our folder backups. And let's click on create folder. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a user and add permissions to the user to access this bucket. So let's go to IAM. So in the IAM, we're first going to actually create permissions. So we're going to click on the policies, and then we're going to click create policy. We can definitely select a service, right, as S3 and get all the permissions here, but I'm going to be using JSON. So let's switch to JSON and let's paste the following policy. And this policy basically allows all actions on S3 bucket, and your bucket will be obviously the name of your bucket, but my bucket name is myblog.alexrusin.com. Let's go ahead and click next. In the policy name, we'll put my blog S3 bucket access. And we can optionally put a description, but I'm gonna leave it blank. We're gonna scroll all the way down and click create policy. Great, our policy is created. Let's go ahead and create a user. Let's click on users and then create user. The username will be my blog user. We can create next. It says add user to group, copy permissions, or you can attach policies directly. That's what we're going to do. We're going to attach policies directly. And in a drop down, we're going to select customer managed policies. And as you can see, we have the policy that we just created. It's called my blog S3 bucket access. Let's select that. And let's go ahead and click next. And finally, we can just create user. The user is created. Let's click in the user, and we need to add security credentials to this user. So let's click on the security credentials, and what we're interested is adding or creating access keys. Well, let's click on create access key. In access keys gives us the best practices, and what we want to do actually is to have a third-party service, Updraft Plus, basically to access the S3 bucket, right? I'm gonna click on it. It's gonna say that it's not the best practice really, and the better practice would be assigning the IAM role to the EC2 instance that we're running the WordPress on, and then accessing S3 bucket that way. However, Updraft Plus doesn't provide this option. Let's click I understand the above recommendation, and let's click next. In the description tag value, we can put credentials for my blog user. Let's click on create access key, and we're given access key and secret access key. You will be presented with a secret access key only once, so be sure to copy and save it somewhere while you're doing setup. Okay, let's go ahead and switch back to WordPress. And now we have Amazon S3 selected, and let's go ahead and put the access key and secret key. So let's go ahead and copy access key. We'll paste that, and let's go get access key secret, and we're going to paste that. And in the location, we'll put myblog.alexrusin.com/backups. Let's go ahead and click on test Amazon S3 settings. And we got an error right here. So seems like it cannot find the bucket. So it looks like we made a little error in our permissions. Let's go back to IAM, click on the policies, find our my blog S3 bucket access policy, and let's click edit. And what we need to do, we actually need to allow to list all the buckets. So we're gonna add the following statement where we have effect allow. It's gonna list bucket, and it's gonna list all the buckets. So now the Updraft Plus can actually find that bucket. Let's click next, and let's click save changes. Now let's go back to Updraft Plus and click test Amazon S3 settings again, and the test is successful. Let's click OK. Let's scroll down. We're gonna have include files backup. We actually want to back up pretty much everything, so but you can customize if you want. Email, no, I don't really care much for email, right? So let's go ahead and scroll up again. We have a files backup schedule. We can have it manual, or we can actually put it daily or weekly. I'll choose weekly, and database backup schedule, we also can choose weekly. And here in retain the backups, you can leave it as 2 or 3, whatever you want. But I think we're all good now, so let's just double check, scroll down, and click Save Changes. And our changes are saved. Now let's go ahead and test that everything works. Let's click on Backup and Restore. And we can click on a Backup now. We'll check that we include everything, right? Include files and database, and this backup is going to go to remote storage. And we can also check this if we only will allow to delete our backups automatically, because we set the maximum number of backups as 2. So this, if you have more than that, then Updraft Plus will automatically delete the backups that are more than 2. We're not going to check this box, however. We can just click Backup Now. And it looks like our backup finished running. We see that it backed up database, plugins, themes, uploads, and others. And now let's go switch to the bucket. We'll go to AWS. We'll go to S3 bucket. We're going to click on myblog.alexrusin.com. We're going to click on the backups. And as you can see, we have the backup files there. So going back to the WordPress, in case you need to restore your site from a certain backup, you simply click Restore button right here. Backing up your WordPress website to AWS S3 using Updraft Plus is a reliable way to ensure your data is secure and easily recoverable. With scheduled backups and secure storage in S3, you can protect your website from data loss due to unexpected events. While setting up Updraft Plus plugin, we use IAM policies to allow the user access S3 bucket. If you would like to learn more about IAM policies and permissions, please check out our video on this topic. Managing media files can become a challenge as your WordPress website grows. Large media libraries can slow down your website, increase storage costs, and impact performance. I will show you how to offload your media files to Amazon S3, a reliable, scalable cloud storage service. We will use WP Offload Media Lite plugin. I'll also guide you through setting up an S3 bucket and creating IAM role, attaching the right permissions, and adding it to EC2. Lastly, we will configure WP Offload Media Lite plugin using IAM roles. Let's get started. I am in a newly installed WordPress website. Let's click on Plugins, and we're going to install a plugin. So we'll click Add a new plugin. So let's search for a plugin, WP Offload Media Lite. Right, we have this plugin right here. We're going to click Install Now. This plugin is installed, and let's click on Activate. Let's click on the settings. Right off the bat, we have Select Provider, and this provider is Amazon S3. It is selected for us. It asks us to define key in wp-config.php, but we're not going to do that because we're hosting WordPress site on AWS, and we can use IAM roles. So let's go ahead and select that. All we need to do now is to create a role and attach it to the EC2 instance that we're running our WordPress on. So let's go to AWS console. We will go to IAM. And in the IAM, we're going to click on roles, and we're going to click on a create role. We're going to keep AWS service right here. In the use case, we're going to select EC2. In the use case EC2, we'll just keep the EC2 as is. Now, then we're going to click Next. Now we need to attach permissions, and we're going to click on a filter by type, and we're going to select Customer Managed. And we have right here my blog S3 bucket access. So let's click on it, and we're going to expand it to see what we've done here. We have a policy that allows listing of all S3 buckets on all the resources, and then we have another policy that allows all the actions on S3 bucket called myblog.alexrusin.com, and we have this asterisk that allows actions on all the objects in this bucket. We created this policy and this bucket in a WordPress backup video, so to learn how to do it, please check it out. Let's go ahead and click Next. Under the role name, we're going to put EC2 Web Instance Role. And we're going to scroll down, and we're going to click Create Role. Our role is created. Let's go to EC2. We're going to go to Instances. We have the web server 1 instance running, and that's where our WordPress is on. So let's select that instance, click on the Actions, Security, and click on Modify IAM Role. Let's go ahead and choose the role, and there is only a role that available to EC2 is this EC2 Web Instance role that we created. Let's select that, and click Update IAM role. Let's go back to WordPress, and now we can click Save and Continue. We're going to keep Use Existing Bucket selected because we created an S3 bucket, and let's click on Browse Existing Buckets. And we got an error right here because it says that list buckets on Amazon S3 cannot be performed because we don't have permission list all my buckets. Let's go ahead and update permissions in our policy on AWS to include S3 list all my buckets. Let's go to IAM. And in the policies, let's click on my blog S3 bucket access. Let's click Edit. We can see the JSON. So what we're going to do here, we're going to put a comma right here, and we're going to paste S3 list all my buckets. Click Next, and click Save Changes. Let's go ahead and close the warning. And let's go back to storage provider. Let's go to the bucket and try browse existing buckets again. And now we can list all the buckets. So we're interested in myblog.alexrusin.com bucket. Let's select that and click Save Selected Bucket. And we're on into another error with a get bucket location action. So let's go ahead and copy this, go back to the policy. Let's edit this policy. We can update this policy again, and we can put S3 get bucket location. Click Next and Save Changes. And let's go ahead, try again. We'll close that. Try to save bucket, and everything worked well. In the security step, since we're not using CloudFront for distribution, we will follow the recommendations and keep bucket security as is. In the storage settings, we're going to leave everything as is, and we're also going to click on Remove Local Media to free up storage space, right? So that's basically our purpose. We don't want to save anything on the EC2 instance or in a Docker container, basically. So let's click that. It's going to give us a little warning right here, but we're okay with that. We'll see the URL preview, right? And then we can click Save Changes. As you can see, we have an issue with the delivery settings right here. So let's click, and it says delivery provider status cannot be determined. We can click check again, and it's not working. So what we need to do is to go to AWS, find our S3 bucket, and we can go to permissions. First, you need to check that block public access is turned off. So you can click edit. And right here, if this is checked, just go ahead and uncheck it. Next thing that you need to do is change the object ownership. Click on Edit, click on ACL Enabled. Check I acknowledge that ACLs will be restored, and click Save Changes. Now let's go back to WordPress and hit check again. And now delivery provider is successfully connected, as well as storage provider is connected as well. Let's go ahead and test. We'll go to Media. We click on Add New Media File. We're going to select Files. We can select the file to upload. And our file got uploaded. So if we click on this file, right here you can see that file URL now says s3amazon.aws.com. And we have the bucket right here. We can go back to AWS. We can look at the bucket objects and refresh it. And we can see that we do have WP content uploads, and in our upload, we do have the file. WordPress actually generates multiple sizes for the image that we uploaded, and as you can see, those sizes are present in an S3 bucket. Offloading your WordPress media to Amazon S3 using WP Offload Media Lite is an effective way to optimize your website's performance, save server space, and enhance reliability. We used IAM role and we attached it to the EC2 instance to allow Offload Media Lite to access S3 bucket. If you want to learn more about IAM roles, please check out our video on this topic.